Welcome to Late Night Story. When the world goes silent and shadows stretch longer, some stories awaken, whispered only to those still awake. So put on your headphones, turn down the lights, and let me guide you through quiet hours. If you're listening alone, you're exactly where you need to be. If everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world, don't forget to subscribe before you drift too far into the dark. Story 1. Have you heard of the board game Messy Hands? Don't play it. I brought a new game. The four of us crowded around the folding table in a dingy basement. Somehow Nadia, Rupert, Todd, and I had managed to stay friends past our college days. Even though we were all graduated, working professionals with mortgages and some of us children, every Tuesday night, we still crammed together in the basement of Nadia's childhood home to play board games. When our fifth member, Paul, was here, we'd continue our D&D campaign, but he was gone more and more on business trips. Todd pulled the lid off the board game. "What is it?" I asked. "No idea," Todd said. "That's part of the fun. Found it at the back of my parents' game closet, which means we have to take half an hour to figure out the rules." Nadia snorted. "It doesn't look so bad," Todd said. Already, he was taking the board out, unfolding it, and centering it on the table. He placed 4 tokens, one for each of us, on the starting line, and a stack of cards in the center. "It doesn't," I agreed. "Geez, when is this game from? It's so faded." "Messy Hands." Rupert read from the lid of the box. "It looks like some simplified version of life. We sure we don't want to play Caton?" "It will be fun," Todd insisted, an edge of annoyance in his tone. Not surprising. The 4 of us 5, including Paul, had been friends for years. We were masters at forgiving each other by now, which also meant we were masters at getting on each other's nerves. Fights were common, but we always resolved them. "Let's give it a chance," I said before a fight could break out. Todd spent less than a minute scanning the rules. "Okay, pretty simple. We just take turns flipping over a card and doing what they say on the back. Nadia, ladies first." She shrugged and nabbed a card. She read it, then set it on the table where we could all read it. "Do a jumping jack to advance 1 space." Okay." She giggled. "So it's like some lame version of truth or dare?" "You gotta do it," I said. She did, and move her token forward once. I flipped over a card next. "Lick your neighbor's hand to advance 2 spaces." 2 spaces, Nadia said. Not fair. Her tone was uncaring, though. None of us seemed to care much about this kid's game. We were doing it to appraise Todd, though even he was looking skeptical now. No harm in playing along to make him less embarrassed, though. So I dropped my face dramatically and touched my tongue to Rupert's hand. "Disgusting," he laughed. I pushed my token 1 past Nadia's. Rupert was next. "Tell a secret to advance 2 spaces." "Draw again." Oh," he said. "You're right. This is like truth or dare." "You're stalling," Todd said. He rolled his eyes. "Fine. You know how I said your new haircut looks good?" "Yeah." "Well, it's all uneven in the back." He flipped another card. "Tell a bigger secret to advance 1 more space." "Draw again." "What the—" Rupert looked at Todd. "Did you set this up?" Todd shrugged. It was odd to get those cards one after another. Then again, we hadn't actually shuffled them. They'd probably come like that. Well, okay," Rupert said. "Let's see. In high school, I was in the same lit class my brother took 2 years before. He'd given me his old computer with all his old files, so I would just turn in his same essays for homework." Nadia oohs, and we all laugh. It sounded like something Rupert would have done. He's always been the most amoral of us, to say the least. He flips his 3rd card. "Tell your biggest secret to advance 1." Again, Rupert looked up at Todd. "Okay, not funny anymore. I swear I didn't put that there." "Okay, well, I'm done. You take your turn." Todd reached for his card, but his hand jerked back. It shocked me. "What?" Rupert asked. "I'm serious. The card shocked me." "That's ridicule," Nadia started, but her hand jerked back too when she touched them. Rupert touched one. Nothing happened. You guys are hilarious. Curious. I tapped the pile next with the very edge of my pinky. Intense electricity shot my arm, into my shoulder and down my legs. I sprang back, my chair nearly tipping. We all looked at each other. Nobody was smiling anymore. We were all looking at each other. It isn't our turn, I said. Hesitantly, Rupert flipped the next card. Tell your biggest secret. I'm out. Red-faced. He snatched his coat from the back of the chair and stormed for the basement door. When he got there, he swore. What is this? We rushed over. He was straining against the clearly locked basement door. Why was he so angry? I'm sick of this game, he screamed, and before any of us could react, he kicked at the flimsy basement door, splintering it. He threw the door open to reveal a wall. The one way out was entirely sealed, as if it had been that way for years. We all stared. I swear I don't know what's going on, Todd said. Rupert stormed past us the window. He climbed on a chair and shoved it open. But even from my spot, I could see the window was walled in too. We spent minutes exploring the basement for a way out, but it was entirely, unexplainably sealed off. None of our cell phones worked either. Messy hands. Nadia whispered finally, I think we have to finish the game before it lets us out. I'm not doing that, Rupert insisted. Why not? Asked Todd. Come on, I don't want to be trapped in here just because you can't tell us a dumb secret. Yeah, why? I asked, what's the secret? What we all asked over and over, what couldn't he tell us? Finally, Rupert exploded. I'm cheating on Rachel. Okay? Happy. We all gawked. Rachel was his wife for 5 years. They had a kid together. We liked Rachel. Rupert was already tried the basement door again, but the wall was still there, solid as before. We had to keep playing. Todd went next. Trembling. Point at your least favorite friend to advance to. Everybody close your eyes, he instructed us. We did. Okay, he said after a few seconds and moved his piece forwards. Even if we hadn't seen who he'd pointed at, it surprised me how quickly he'd chosen. Nadia was next. Do another jumping jack to advance one. Not all of them were bad. Not nearly as bad as Rupert's first turn. We went one by one, doing whatever things the game said. From then on, if we had to confess something distasteful, the rest of us would follow Todd's example and plug our ears. For one turn I had to strip completely down, but the others all closed their eyes until I was dressed again. Slowly, the cards got worse. There were still the occasional freebies. For some reason, jumping jacks kept popping up for Nadia. But overall, the task became less harmless. Cut 6 inches from your hair to advance one. Nadia teared up. Her hair wasn't long to begin with. 6 inches would make it practically a pixie cut. She took nearly an hour to work up the nerve. She tried screaming at the sealed-up door and failed over and over to connect to the non-existent Wi-Fi. We didn't coerce her, but eventually, she grabbed a pair of scissors in tears and seared off most of her hair. It was nearly 8 a.m. now. Our families would be wondering where we were. My turn. Draw blood to advance one. Draw again. The draw agains were never a good sign. I used a box cutter to poke at my finger until a line of red appeared. Draw more to advance one. Draw again. Wonderful. Just great. I used the box cutter on my thigh this time. When I tried to pick up another card, though, it shocked me. I cut again until blood was dripping onto my socks. Draw more to advance one. From somebody else. At least there's not another draw again. I said. Do me. Rupert volunteered. He'd been pretty silent since his first turn. I knelt down to his leg. Wait, said Nadia. Head wounds bleed the most with shallowest cuts. Sorry, I told him. It took nearly 3 slices along the top of his scalp before the game determined it was enough. We were close now. My token was the farthest, on the very last space before the finished box. The others were all only a space or 2 behind that. Rupert's turn. Text your wife you want a divorce to advance one. But our phones don't even air. Rupert stopped short as his phone pinged. Text after text flooded in. He tried calling, but that wouldn't work. He tried messaging people, but nothing went through despite the full bars. Of course, it wouldn't work. We'd accepted that by now. We were playing by the game's rules now. The only thing his phone would work for was texting one person one message. Rupert pressed send, and his reception bars disappeared. He was crying now, too. But at least he was with me on the board. The last space before the finish. Todd's turn. Break your hand to advance one. Draw again. This task took him nearly half an hour. We considered just having one of us do it break his hand for him. But of course, what if that didn't work? What if it had to be him? And then he had to break both his hands. Because we'd done it wrong. Instead, Todd punched the wall in the doorway until he was screaming in pain. To his credit, he never cried. Break somebody else's hand to advance two. Do me, I said. Rupert already got all cut up. What about me? Nadia asked. Is this because I'm a girl? How about we put off the gender equality conversation for another time, all right? I looked away as Todd, still trembling from his own hand, slammed the hammer against my backhand. As it happens, I did cry, I can't do it, Nadia said in her turn. We're all almost done, Rupert said. You're the only one with 2 spots left, and those 2 need to get to a hospital. We can't take long turns anymore. Please, just go. I knew he was thinking of his wife. She'd be awake by now with his text on her screen, and him gone all night. He had to be desperate to explain. Nadia flipped her card. Point at somebody to advance 2. That was it. No cut off your limb or bite out your tongue. Just point at somebody. It was too easy. So far the game had been straightforward with us. But 2 spaces meant Nadia would win. Be done. Something was up. I was just about to say all this when she shrugged and pointed at Rupert. His head exploded. My ears rang. My mouth. The taste of him was in my gaping mouth. This couldn't be real. Rupert couldn't actually be. He wasn't. Down on the board his token had disintegrated. Just like that, a point and a snap, Rupert was gone. His child had no father. Finish it. Nadia sobbed at me. Please. Todd was too in shock to move. I flipped my last card. Pointed somebody to advance 1. I'd known it was coming. After Nadia's turn, I'd just known the game would force me to make this decision. Especially now we knew what the pointing meant. If it could make noise, it would be laughing. Choose me, Nadia begged. I can't do it anymore. It just says somebody. I said, I'm somebody. I can choose myself. Please, look at what I did to Rupert. I can't keep going after this. Even so, I readied my good hand to point at my own face. This ended now. I took one last look at my oldest friends, at Nadia bawling but kind as ever, at Todd pale-faced and guilty. It's my fault, he whispered. All my fault. And you know what? He was right. This was his fault for demanding we play this terrible board game. I pointed at Todd. Story 2. Killers Anonymous. When I found a post tucked away in the dark corners of the internet, my interest was piqued. It was titled Killers Anonymous. At first, I thought it was a joke made to scare or morbidly amuse people, but I was wrong. It was a support group created for people like me. When I was about 18, I began a loathe life, and I couldn't stand seeing my peers enjoying theirs. I would spend hours alone, but grew into days of no contact. The drugs and alcohol I had been using started flooding my mind with unsavory things. I started fantasizing about death, and I imagined becoming the one who dishes it out. I would relish in thinking about the high I could achieve through such an act, a high that no drug could provide me, a high that I would never come down from. I knew it was wrong to think that way, but I couldn't help but take pleasure from it. After thoroughly reading the post, I was hesitant to apply. What if this were some new way for law enforcement to collect information on potentially dangerous people? I thought. I applied regardless. And after about a week, I finally received a confirmation email. The email contained almost all the same information as the post. I scrolled down to the bottom, which contained their meeting schedule. Next Friday? I said, after I had passed the idea around in my head for several days. I decided to go. I was still nervous, but also excited. I was finally going to get the chance to speak about these urges, and not have someone shame me for them. At least I hoped I wouldn't be. I had never told anyone about them before, but could you blame me? This isn't exactly a problem everyone struggles with. Friday came quickly, and as I stood outside the house I was told to meet at, anxiety began to build. Once again, what if all this was a setup? I swallowed my fears and made my way to the front door. I gave a few firm knocks, and a woman opened and greeted me. She was a cute brunette, and she looked to be in her late 20s. "Oh, hello, are you here for the group?" she said with a cheerfulness about her. Yes, I am," I said as I reached out to shake her hand. "Good to meet you," she said while returning my gesture. "Please come in and make yourself at home. We will be starting soon, but first, which group are you in?" I paused and was confused by her question. I thought it was just the one group. I asked, "Oh no, there are actually 4 groups," she said. "One group wouldn't be big enough. You would be surprised by how many people we get. Group 4 has fewer people if you would like to start with a smaller group." "I'll be in group 4 then," I said before walking inside. Greeting me were 2 large living rooms to the right and left. Each room had chairs placed in a circular pattern. There was also a staircase leading into what looked like another large space. "Your group is in the left room," the woman explained. "You made the right choice coming here, and I hope we can help." "Thank you," I said before taking my seat. After about 30 minutes of waiting, both of the bottom rooms now looked full of people. An older man in our circle, probably about 60, stood from his chair and introduced himself. "Hello everyone, my name is Troy, redacted, and I'll be mediating tonight. I would like to start by saying how proud I am that you're all here tonight. I know all of you are probably nervous and hesitant, but I want you all to know you're safe here. Now, I see that we have some new faces here tonight. Would anyone like to introduce themselves?" After a few seconds of silence, another man in the group broke the tension. "I would," he said. "My name is Mike." "Nice to meet you, Mike," Troy responded. "Would you like to tell the group a bit about yourself and maybe why you're here?" Sure," Mike said with an unsure tone. "I was just a young boy when it started. It was small with just some thoughts, images, and fantasies. But after a few years, I started to experiment with dissecting animals. Mostly small ones like birds, rodents, and the occasional cat. Taking away the lives of animals brought a sense of comfort. I would strangle, stab, drown, electrocute, and then dismember them to finish. I felt in complete control, and my mind would become free and clear again. But the older I got and the harder life got, I needed to do it more and more often. Recently, it hasn't been helping at all." Mike went silent before Troy responded. "That was very brave of you, son. Not a lot of people can open up about their thoughts and actions like that." Mike's story fascinated me. I too had considered killing animals for pleasure, but I didn't think it would provide enough satisfaction to satiate me. Besides, I actually liked and respected animals. It was people I had a vendetta against. Troy turned his gaze towards me. "How about you, son? Would you feel comfortable introducing yourself to the group?" I nodded in agreement and told them about my disgust for people, about how I hated my own life, and explained my feelings towards how others enjoyed theirs. After I was done, I scanned the room. Everyone looked visibly uncomfortable with what I was saying. I took a deep breath before finishing. "But now I'm here and looking for help." Troy stood again. "Thank you, Eli," he said before giving me the same comforting message that he gave Mike. After Troy sat back down, another woman raised her hand before saying she wanted to go next. She told the group about how she hated her parents and wanted to kill them. After she explained herself, she broke down in tears. Troy began to comfort her before calling the meeting to a close. After the group stood and exchanged pleasantries, I made my way over to Mike, who was standing on the porch. "Hey, it's Mike, right?" I said while tapping him on the shoulder. "Yeah, what's up?" he asked. "I don't have a whole lot of people who I can talk to about these sort of things. So I was wondering if you'd like to get some lunch?" I asked. Sure, why not?" he said with a sign of hesitation. "Great. How does Jen's Diner sound?" "Sounds good," he said before giving a slight smile. After a few mile drive, I pulled into the diner parking lot. Mike pulled in right after. We walked inside and were approached by an attractive young waitress. "How many?" She asked. 2, I answered. And can we get a booth? Sure, Ken. Right this way. She guided us to our booth before asking, so what can I start you two off with a drink? I'll take a water, said Mike. Sure thing, and you, sir? I looked deep into her eyes. She looked so sweet and innocent. I'll have the same, I said with a smile. Okay, I'll have those waters out to y'all shortly, she said before walking off. So, Eli, what made you want to join the group? Mike asked while seeming a bit fidgety. I guess I finally felt like it was time to get some help. Though, I don't remember you ever saying what you want out of the group. I asked, well, I guess you could say I want help, but I also kind of don't, Mike said while looking down and avoiding eye contact. Same, I said with a chuckle. I want help, but I still really want to try at least once. His eyes looked up with a glimpse of curiosity in his eyes. You know I was Dash, Mike said before being cut off. Here are those waters, said the waitress. Are y'all ready? Or do you need a few more minutes? I looked at Mike and gestured confirm before responding. Yeah, we're ready. I'll take the clubhouse sandwich and chips. All righty, and what will you have? She said while looking at Mike. I'll have the working man's burger with fries and no mayo, please, Mike said while looking more comfortable and open. Sure thing. I'll be back with y'all's orders as soon as it's ready, she said before once again heading back to the kitchen. Back to what I was saying, Mike said after taking a sip of water. I had an idea. What if just once we follow through with our urges, just to see if we truly have it in us or not? I felt it was a great idea before saying, I don't know, are you sure that's something you want to do? Yes, he said with confidence. I've been sure for a long time. When he said that, I could hear the seriousness in his tone. I reached out my hand to meet his. It felt like two partners agreeing on a business deal. After a few minutes went by, the waitress returned with our food. Here you are, 1 clubhouse sandwich with chips, and 1 working man's burger with fries with no mayo. Enjoy. We both thanked her before returning to our conversation. So, do you have anyone in mind? I said. I saw him peer over my shoulder to the kitchen window. He looked like a hungry predator who had just caught sight of a plump hog. How about her? He said. I think she would work. I turned to look back while having a good idea who he was referring to. It was at our gorgeous waitress. Don't you think she would be a bit risky? Especially since she looks young and is probably known by a lot of customers? Wouldn't people notice if she went missing? I asked. Of course, he said. But there isn't anyone going to suspect us. We're nobodies to her, with no connections. Okay, we'll do it, I said, hoping he was right. A few more minutes went by, and we finished our meals. The waitress came and gave us our bills. Here you both are. Will you be needing anything else? She asked. No, Mike responded. I think we're good. As the waitress walked back to the kitchen, Mike was eyeballing her up and down. We made our way back to our vehicles. Meet me here tomorrow, and we can start planning, Mike said. Got it. I agreed before shaking his hand once more. I sat in my car while I watched Mike drive off in his truck. Soon after, I headed back home. I lived in a little apartment located in a more run-down part of town. It was all I could barely afford while working as a bookkeeper for a small local shop. Later that night, while lying in bed and staring up at the ceiling, the feeling of losing control, which I was all too familiar with, had returned to me. I thought long and hard trying to cling to the idea of Mike, and I had. I was hoping to be comforted by it, and it soon proved I was right. The next day, I met up with Mike at the diner at around 7 o'clock in the evening, just as we had planned. We had parked in the abandoned parking garage across the street to help get a better view. I got out of my car to hop into Mike's older pickup truck. There she is, Mike said while looking through a pair of binoculars. Hello, gorgeous. So what's the plan here, Mike? I asked him. I think we should just follow her home to start. See if she lives with other people or not. He responded. After about 2 hours went by, the diner looked to be closing for the night. We sat a while longer and waited for the waitress to come out. About 30 minutes later, we saw her getting into her car. Mike started the engine, and we made our way to the garage exit. We followed her for what felt like 30 minutes out of town. She led us out into the country, which wasn't a shock since we lived in a small rural town in Georgia. She pulled off onto a dirt road. We followed a bit longer before she pulled into what looked like a driveway. We crept up in front of her home with our headlights off. Mike pulled out his binoculars again. Should we just do it now? I asked. No, he answered sternly. We don't even know if she lives alone or not yet. Besides, I want to take her back to my place. I live in a nice, quiet, and deserted place like this. Your place? I asked him. Yeah, my place. If I'm going to do this, I want to do it right. He said, sounding like a tradesman talking about his craft. Okay, I said, not wanting to upset him. He didn't respond, and instead just kept watching her. She pulled out her keys, unlocked the front door, and went inside. Huh. She turned on the porch light. Maybe she is giving us a go-ahead to come on in, Mike said while chuckling. I laughed with him before he pressed on the gas pedal. After we hit paved road again, he asked me, "You want to come over to my place? I'll show you what I got prepped." Curious, I answered, "Sure, why not?" "Great," he said, sounding excited. "I think you'll love it, and I think it'll help give you more confidence in our plan." He drove us back to his place, and he was right. It was in the middle of nowhere, a small mobile home on a piece of land that had a big barn in the back. We got out and walked around back to the barn. "This is it," he said, sounding proud. "This is where we're going to do it." It looked old while littered with cobwebs and hay. The left wall when walking through the entrance was covered in saws, hatchets, machetes, rakes, and even had a cleaver. It looked like a scene pulled right out of a slasher film. The right wall had metal rings, with what looked like chains and cuffs looped through them. They were lined up in a row leading all the way to the back, and it looked like a dungeon. Lastly, in the center was a large rectangular concrete slab, which looked to be about 4 feet high, 7 feet in length, and another 4 feet in width. It too had metal loops drilled into it, and I could see leather straps lying on top. "Wow, this is pretty impressive, Mike. Are you sure you haven't done this before?" I asked while laughing. "No," he said while grinning and laughing. "But I've been planning and thinking about it for years. I just haven't had the gumption to finally commit to it, but now, thanks to you, I do. Well, after getting a good look at this place, I think everything is going to go great." I said, "Hey, do you want to come in for a beer?" He asked. "Sure, why not?" I said after checking my watch. "It's only midnight. I'll have one before we head back to my car." We stepped back out through the large barn doors, and Mike locked them back before making our way to his mobile home. We walked inside with Mike leading the way, and I could hear Mike fumbling around while trying to find the light switch. Finally, the lights came on, and Mike went to the kitchen to fetch us a couple of beers. "So do you live alone here, or do your folks live here too?" I asked. I got this place all to myself. My parents passed a few years back, and since I'm an only child, it all got left to me, he said before handing me a beer. "What happened to them?" I asked, hoping not to upset him. "Died right in there," Mike said while pointing to what looked like a master bedroom. "I woke one day and found them still in bed, cold to the touch and not moving. You know I buried them out back. Mama always hated the idea of being buried in a place full of strangers, so figure home would be more comfortable for her." "And what about your dad? Is he buried here too?" I asked, very curious to know more. "Technically," Mike said before letting out a loud laugh, "as long as you consider being turned into pig shit being buried. Even that is probably too good for him." Not wanting to push the subject further, I kept silent and nodded. We continued talking for a bit longer while we finished our beers. As I stood up from his couch ready to head back, I started feeling nauseous and could barely hold my footing. "Can't handle one beer?" he said before I finally stumbled to the floor. "Ice water," I said while trying to hold back vomit. Mike nodded before bringing me a glass. I poured some on my face, but it didn't help. I was in and out of consciousness for many hours, but I do remember feeling rocks and sticks rubbing against my back like I was being dragged. Next, I could hear chains rattling, and soon after, metal cuffs clamped shut around my wrists. I felt the metal dig tightly into my skin. After that, I didn't come to until a stinging beam of sunlight pierced my eyelids from a hole in the barn wall. I looked around, still feeling the lingering effects from whatever was in my drink. It was hot and humid, and my clothes were drenched in sweat. My hands were numb from being in the cuffs for so long. Mike was nowhere in sight, and I couldn't hear much of anything outside. I tried wiggling the chains loose, but I had no luck. As the day went by, and the lingering effects went away, so did the sunlight. The sun was setting, and the barn was soon plunged into darkness. Headlights shot through cracks in the walls and lit up the barn. Soon after, I heard the sound of crunching pine straw coming toward the barn. The sound of the barn doors opening sent chills up my spine. I started hyperventilating, and my stomach turned from the thought of what he was going to do to me. "Breathe, Eli," said Mike after turning on the bright overhead lights. "I haven't even started yet." "Whoa, why are you doing this?" "I thought we were a team," I said after catching my breath. "No, Eli, we weren't a team. I do like you, though, so I'm sorry I have to do this. If I had the strength to not give in to my temptations, I would," he said in a dead, monotone voice that I had yet heard from him. "What are you going to do to me?" I asked while trying to control my breath. "Eli, I'm going to be honest with you. It's not going to be good for you. I have temptations and compulsions that go beyond just killing," he said before filling a syringe. My stomach and chest burned with fear, and I feel my body want to convulse. He walked over to me before sticking me in the arm with the needle. I was begging him to stop, but he just told me to hush. It didn't take long for the effects to take hold, and I was out like a light again. After I returned to what I assumed was going to be a brief time back in the land of living, I found myself lying on the concrete slab. My legs, arms, torso, and neck had leather straps tethering me to it. After many hours of being restricted from using the restroom, I could smell my soiled clothes. I felt like an animal locked in a pen and ready for the slaughter. As I laid there marinating in my own waste, I could hear whistling approaching the barn. Once again, the loud noise from the barn doors opening filled the air. "Good Lord, man, it smells like fucking piss and shit in here," he said while chuckling. "Perhaps I should put you in some diapers." I didn't say anything in response. I didn't have anything left to say to Mike that wasn't already said. He then grabbed the cleaver that was hanging on the wall before walking over to me. He rubbed my legs down with what smelled like alcohol. After he had wiped down my legs, he grabbed my left leg to hold it still and then raised his right arm holding the cleaver. He looked like a butcher, ready to get to work. His arm swung down in full force, and I heard the bones in my leg crunch. A sharp pain rang loud to my leg. With every swing, I hear crunch after crunch. I could hear my flesh tearing and my blood gushing out. I started to black out from the pain. "No, no, no," Mike yelled after splashing ice-cold water in my face. "We're not done yet." I looked down at my body and I could see my leg. It was sitting in a gray bucket that had been set between my legs. I threw up from the gruesome sight. Mike wiped my blood from his hands and face with a cloth before grabbing my right leg. "Almost done, Eli," he said before hacking away again. I saw my blood splash across his face once more. The pain was too severe for me to stay conscious. The next thing I remember was ice-cold water soaking my face and once again bringing me back. "All done for now," he said while patting my face. "You sewed up real nice, Eli." I looked back down to see that the bucket was gone, but so were both of my legs. I had stitches all over the nubs where my legs once were. Everything from just below my knees was gone. "Come on, let's get you chained back up," Mike said, while undoing the arm straps. "No needles this time?" I asked him sarcastically. "Planning on running away?" He asked while returning the same sarcastic tone before letting out a sickening laugh. He then picked me up and tossed me over his shoulder. As he was walking me back over the chains, I saw that he had an old pocket knife tucked in his back pocket. I reached for it, and luckily my arms were just long enough. I managed to grab it and drive it into the back of Mike's neck. I fell and hit the ground hard after Mike dropped me. He stumbled for a second before finally hitting the ground as well. His clothes were soaked in blood, and I couldn't tell how much was mine or his. Mike leaned up against the concrete slab before showing me his eyes, which were now filled with rage. "Fuck you," He yelled in between spitting up blood. Eventually, his words became nothing more than bloody gurgling, and then his body went limp. I crawled to the barn doors and was barely able to get one of them open. I managed to make it to the mobile home before finding my cell phone in his nightstand. I called the police and told them the address, which I found off a piece of mail sitting on the coffee table. I sat on the floor in his room until the police finally busted down the front door. 2 officers rushed in and lifted me up before carrying me outside. 2 paramedics met them, and they took care of me from there, the whole ride in the back of the ambulance. All I could think about was what would happen if Mike had some evidence of what we were planning together. After they got me to the hospital, they cleaned my wounds and redid the stitches. A few hours went by, and an officer walked into my room. "How are you doing, son?" The officer asked. "I could be better," I said before letting out a groan from the pain. "I'm sorry for asking. Anyway, I'm Detective Harrington," he responded, "and I wanted to ask you about the man who did this while your memory is still fresh." I was reluctant, but I knew he was probably right. "Sure, what do you need to know?" "Do you remember what happened when he abducted you?" "It was while I was walking out to my car a few days ago." I lied, hoping he would buy it. "And do you remember where this happened?" he asked. "No." I lied again. I don't remember much of what happened before waking up in the barn. He stuck me in the neck with something, and I was out. Okay, and did the perpetrator ever mention anything about his parents? Or maybe a woman by the name of Emily, redacted? Detective Harrington asked. "He told me they died a few years back, but not much else. And I don't know an Emily, redacted. Who is she?" I asked. He scratched his beard and finished writing in his notes before saying, "We think she was who he was targeting next. She's just some waitress at a local diner, but you don't need to worry about those details." "You sure?" "I'm positive, son. You just get some rest. Well, we can continue after you get a little better," he said before stepping back out. After a few days in the hospital, the doctor saw me fit to go home, and I was wheeled out to my father's car. He thanked the nurse for wheeling me out before he loaded me into his car. On the way home, he tried talking to me and asked me questions about what had happened, but I didn't answer. I stared out the window, not saying a word. After he figured out I wasn't up for talking, we finished the ride in silence. When we pulled into the driveway, he helped me inside and laid me down in the guest bedroom. While lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, not blinking or uttering a word. I could feel pain in my legs that weren't there. I hated the bastard for what he did to me. I felt betrayed by someone who I thought was becoming my friend. By someone just like me. I guess it's for the best, though. Now nobody has to worry about what I could do anymore. Story 3. During my last robbery, I found something I wish I hadn't. At the outset, I should tell you I'm a thief. Not a classless smash and grab guy or a lowly pickpocket. Those require no planning or strategy beyond. Move quickly and be ready to run. I'm a 4th-generation cat burglar. I'm very good at my job. If everything goes right, you don't notice I've been there for weeks, if ever. I understand most people find this line of work deplorable. I'm okay with that. I could go on and on about how the system steals from us all the time and how the rich use their ill-gotten gains to subjugate us and give you the whole, I'm really a Robin Hood type figure. But I will spare you all that rationality. I'm a thief because I'm good at it and was raised in a culture that values it. There are other reasons, but it's not worth getting into them. To be a cat burglar isn't just about breaking into a house and cleaning out a safe. That's part of the job, sure, but like an iceberg, most of it remains hidden from view. My father used to tell me, being a thief is being prepared to be bored out of your mind. He wasn't wrong. About that, anyway, wrong about a lot of other things. But I digress. Once I narrow in on an address, I have to sit it. That sounds easy, but it's not. It's boring. Clean the garage, boring. Waiting in line at the DMV, boring. But it has to be done. Veg before ice cream. Boy. Veg before ice cream. Dad again. He told me this while housing a sleeve of Fig Newtons before dinner. Much to my chagrin, he was right. Again, outside of watching a house for hours on end. There are so many dozens of other things to keep track of. Has anybody made you while your case in place? What hours do the servants work? What's the best way onto the property? How do I get in and out of the house with little chance of being caught? Each question needs to be answered beforehand. Finally, the big question, what's the security situation? A lot of these McMansions come pre-built with high-tech security features in place for the first year. That's when the lower cost prices disappear. Most people, even millionaires, will cut off services at that point. They keep the signs, sure, but not the actual equipment. That's gone like disco, and they ain't ever coming back. Why? There are two major reasons. First, the rich live in a bubble and don't believe anyone can get to them. Money enables hubris. Second, rich people are the cheapest people in the world. Why pay for the real thing when a chintzy lookalike will do? Capitalism's beating heart is to make the most money by spending the least amount of it. The illusion of security is cheaper than actual security. The night of the robbery, I felt good, prepared. I'd watched, noted everyone's daily schedule, marked my entrance and exits, knew where the primary bedroom was located. I even wore my lucky shirt. Fat lot of good that did. I waited until I saw the Uber leave, and then started my half-hour timer. It's been my experience that the help empties out not long after the boss leaves. Cat's away and all that, as if on cue, the servants bolted as soon as the Uber was out of sight. I still waited the 30 minutes. Like a shitty magic spell, stragglers can transform into witnesses. Seeing none, I made my way onto property. The most tense moment of any heist is when you're about to break in. Even in all black, even in the dark, there's still a chance someone could see you. A nosy neighbor, a dog walker, a panhandler. Anyone. Time works against you. Too slow, you draw attention. Too fast, you make mistakes. A steady hand and a calm demeanor are key here. I have those in spades. This is also the moment that you can't plan for. Did you miss bars on the window? Are there more than one lock on the door? Did someone stay home? Is the alarm system on? Are there cameras rolling? It's a gamble that can cost you your freedom. Your life. It's also a rush. I've discovered that most of the time, upper floor windows in McMansions are unlocked. The thinking goes, well, we have several layers of security before anyone could get to that point. Why bother? I get it. It's a mistake, but one most people would make. Hanging on the outside downspout, I sighed in relief. This window was unlocked. I pushed open the window and climbed in. My moccasins softly touched the floor, making no noise. They're not the most durable in the wild, but inside, they are worth their weight in gold. No tread to ID, no noise on carpets. Comfortable as all hell. The room was dark, and I had no desire to change that. I keep a tiny penlight in my pocket for that reason. I become so accustomed to seeing the world in the tiny circle of light that my eyes quickly attune to the dark. A cat in every sense. I assume the truly valuable things, wills, bank account information, holy grails, would be in a safe. I don't crack safes. Well, not in people's homes. Anyway, too complicated. Too messy. I was after jewels. Thanks to my extensive history, I knew where I'd find them. Even in the dark, you could tell how obscenely large the walk-in closet was. It wasn't even fair to call it a walk-in closet, more like a studio apartment for clothes. 3 of the walls were lined with suits and dresses that may have been worn once, maybe twice. Some still had tags on them. The last wall was dedicated to shoes. Red bottom Louboutins and rare Jordans as far as the eye or penlight could see. But what caught my attention was the makeup vanity carved into the wall, like Petra in the Shar Mountains. More specifically, the 3 jewelry boxes sitting there. I moved to them like a zealot to the temple. This was what I came for. My haul would keep me in the black for a while, unless it was costume jewelry. The cocktease of stones, Dad would say. I pried open the first lid and smiled. Dozens of bejeweled brooches shimmered before me, like the hundreds of eyes of some mythological monster, all shapes and sizes, most ugly but authentic. The genuine article has a certain touch to them, a heft. These were legit. I plucked a few from the bottom of the box and placed them into my bag. My fingers found something that had an odd shape, I pulled it out to get a closer look. A triangle inside a pentagon. It was on the small side, but was full of diamonds. Valuable? Very. But something felt wrong about it. I dropped it back in. The longer you do this job, the more adept you get at picking the right things to steal. The secret is to only take 2 or 3 pieces at a time. Of the few you take, ensure they're plain looking. Nothing memorable. Unique pieces are hard to fence. If they end up in a pawn shop and a cop finds them, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump until it's traced back to you. Iron handcuffs. Jail time. Hard pass on my end. As I put the piece in my bag, my light started flickering. I gently tapped it against the vanity. As I did, I glanced up into the vanity mirror. My heart seized. There was a figure standing near the open window. Out of instinct, I snapped around, ready to rumble, but the figure was gone. I flipped off my light and pocketed it. I turned back to the mirror and my breath caught. It was standing in the closet doorway now. I balled my fist. I wasn't going to jail. I'd go down swinging. But when I spun to meet them eye to eye, the figure was gone. Again, I was confused. I know I saw someone. I couldn't tell you the details, but there was a person standing there, watching like they weren't surprised to see me in there. The sound of footsteps running from the primary bedroom down the hall echoed through the empty house. After a beat, I heard a door slam somewhere on the floor. My legs wobbled under me. My mouth was dry. I'd experienced plenty of odd shit on the job, but a ghost? Never. Unless it wasn't a ghost. If it wasn't, I was truly up shit's creek without a paddle. A person could be worse. Would be worse. A ghost can't call the cops. If you like fucking cardboard tubes or lubed up dudes, jail's the bee's knees, Brian. Dad again. I was 8 when he shared this pearl of wisdom with me. What can I say? It stuck with me. It had become my guiding principle. Make smart decisions or learn to squeeze a Charmin. My eyes caught the billowing curtains. It snapped me out of my daze. Exit? Yes, but maybe not. Curiosity urged me to go down the hall and see what had been watching me. The thought germinated and bloomed before my rational mind ripped it out at the roots. Get out now, idiot. I started for the window, but stopped myself. Clean up, then go. As I turned to shut the boxes, I heard the familiar slam of a window. Someone had shut my exit route. Fuck. I turned, and naturally, there wasn't anyone there except the sound of footsteps running back down the hall. Another door slammed. Holy hell, I said. My tongue fell fat in my mouth. I swiftly cleaned up and made my way to the window. As I got there, I heard something every thief dreads. The front door opened. I knew it wasn't the one I'd heard before, because I heard the loud, boorish homeowner come barging in. I know you're up there. I saw it on camera, you whore. My fingers gripped the window, and I tried to yank it up. It wouldn't budge. Felt like invisible hands held it down. Panic spiked my blood. My fingertips prickled with fear. I had to hide. Now, I retreated into the closet. As I did, I heard the door down the hall open up again, and footsteps raced to the stairs. They stopped at the landing, turned, and ran back to the room, slamming the door as they did. This seemed to agitate the owner. He increased his rate, racing up the stairs 2 at a time. He bellowed, "You better pray to God I don't catch you. I'm going to take my time making you bleed. So much so that your final ascension will feel like a relief." I didn't know what any of that meant and didn't want to find out. The diversion, though, gave me enough time to find a spot to hide. There was only one that would work, behind the racks of clothes. It wasn't ideal, but I was out of options. I split the clothes like I was Moses parting the Red Sea and slid into the gap behind them. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Another sound, a cell phone ringing, joined them there. God damn it, the voice spat. "You're lucky, you little bitch. Run now, but you can't hide from me. I'm everywhere." After another ring, he picked up. "Pete, buddy, what's going on?" His tone had changed entirely. My heart was zooming. Felt like a coke addict running wind sprints. I've been close to being caught before. Had to slip the fuzz once or twice, but never found myself in a situation like this. I tried to keep my cool, but my body didn't get the message. I trembled. Sweat beaded on my forehead. Fat droplets rolled down my face. I took a deep breath to try to recenter myself. It didn't work. Trust me, Pete. I get it. I know how many strings you had to pull to get me involved. The man was now in the primary bedroom. I prayed he'd avoid this closet, but when the overhead light popped on, I knew I was good and fucked. He was coming in here. I leaned back against the wall, as if it would eventually absorb me. I kept my hands balled into fists in case I had come out swinging. Loath as I was to admit it, I was trapped. A thief's worst nightmare. No way out without announcing myself. Worse, I had a limited line of sight. Even if there were a chance to leave, I'd have a hard time seeing it. A man dressed in an expensive tuxedo speed-walked into the closet. He was older, perhaps in his mid-50s, but didn't look it. Not at first blush. Good skin, finely trimmed mustache, and a head full of slick-back black hair. He looked like a cartoon drawing of a crooked politician had come to life. I did my due diligence. No family connections. No internet profile. No warrants. Nothing. A nobody. Perfect for the gathering. He paced as he spoke. When he came by where I was hiding, through the suit jackets, I could get a better look at him. Upon closer inspection, the man's actual age shone through. His face bore a telltale sign of plastic surgery. Plastic, uncanny valley look. While most of his hair was jet black, he had the budding growth of silver poly walnut-style wings around his temples. The corners of his eyes and mouth had the faintest of cracks. Yes, he was that close to me. The man pressed the phone against his ear and held it in place with his shoulder as he shimmed out of his suit jacket. He flung the expensive jacket onto the ground as if it were covered in ants. The phone never left his ear. Pete, Peter. Seriously, I know. I get the scope. Okay, yes, I know. It's why I doubled back. I'm changing. I know they're very particular. Only get one shot at a first impression. He stopped directly in front of me and shook his head. Would I get a first impression? His conversation engrossed him. That thrilled me. If he had even been the tiniest bit bored, he might have noticed a face staring back at him from the Armani wing of his closet. Just then, the lights in the closet flickered. The man looked up at the blinking bulbs and shook his head. As he did, I spotted something hidden away across the closet. Standing half in the shadows was a figure I'd seen earlier. It wasn't a person. I wanted to scream. I wanted to turn and run as fast as my jello legs would take me. But I couldn't do anything but shut my eyes and wish it away. So that's what I did. Christ, the man said. No, not you. This fucking closet light is on the fritz again. I know, I should have hired your guy, but Mary was so big on the asshole who built this out. What could I do? Happy wife, happy life, right? Pete said something, and the man guffawed. Should I say, happy second wife, happy life? Nothing would have pleased that first bitch. As the two men laughed, I felt a presence appear next to me behind the clothes. A feeling in the animal part of my brain. A predator was near. Flee. Run for the safety of the bush. Little rabbit. But I couldn't. Not even when I felt the hot breath on my neck. This got me to wrench open my eyes. I turned and expected to find some biblical ghoul waiting to devour my soul. Instead, the man's hand reached for a suit jacket beside me. A $300,000 watch on his wrist. The salt and pepper arm hair escaping his starched white shirt. Money to burn. What I didn't see or feel was a ghoul. It was gone. The light flickering also stopped. The creature's absence took away some of the tension, but didn't set my mind at ease. I was still trapped. If this guy stumbled or moved his hand 3 inches, he'd hit me square in the face. I held my breath, afraid my faint breathing might alert him. He yanked the jacket off the hanger. The hanger swung back and hit me square in my right eye. I slammed my lid closed and squeezed hard, praying that would take away the pain, but knowing it wouldn't. I wanted to rub it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to jump up and down in pain. But all I could do was trap the pain in my body and wait for him to leave. The light above started to strobe again. That, coupled with my wounded eye, made it damn near impossible to see anything clearly. But my ears worked just fine, over the man's tasteless jabbering. I heard floorboards outside the closet creak. Pete, let me tell you, I'm so excited to join up with the organization. I think you guys are going to love the Tasty Little. The light shut off. So did the man's mouth. I used the darkness to scratch at my eye like a 1980s DJ. I blinked once, twice, 3 times. It stayed open. It hurt like hell, but I could see again. Or I would be able to if the light hadn't just shut off. Jesus Christ. I hate this goddamn closet. No, just let me let you go. I gotta check something out before I leave again. I know I won't be late. He hung up his phone, but futz with it. Try and turn on the flashlight. The screen's weak light lit up the edges of his face. He looked otherworldly. A hideous goon god had not intended to replicate. His fumbling fingers finally found the flashlight. As soon as he flipped it on, his phone died. Goddamn Chinese crap. How does this bullshit cost $1,000? The only light now poured in from the open closet door, right near where I had heard the creaking. My cat burglar-trained eyes had adjusted to the low light. I strained my neck trying to get a peek at the door, but the man's body had come between me and the exit. Mumbling to himself, he strode toward it. Before he could leave, though, something quickly ran into the bedroom and slammed the closet door shut. I heard the turn of a lock before the sprinting of feet as they ran down the hallway. The man screamed and slammed into the door. The walls rattled, but the door held firm. He shouldered it again as hard as he could. It was a dumb mistake. He crumpled to the floor, moaning in pain and grabbing at his shoulder. Fucking hell, he said, rubbing his wound. He kicked the bottom of the door twice, not in any attempt to open it, but out of frustration. I'm gonna beat someone's ass. He kicked the bottom of his door a 3rd time for good measure. He pushed himself back up, muttering curses under his breath, and made his way to the vanity. He felt along the side of the counter until he found a latch and pulled it. With a click, the vanity revealed itself to be a door into a hidden room. An eerie white light emanated from the room, and I realized it was a glow of dozens of TV screens. A panic room. I couldn't move to get a closer look, but it was clear he was searching the screens for something. Or, more likely, someone. He walked deeper into the panic room, and I took that moment to shuffle, ever so, quietly, a little closer to where he was. I fucking knew it. The man yelled. The hate and menace in his voice made me wince. Seconds later, he came storming out of the panic room with something in his hands. I couldn't make out at first, but when he swung it against the door, I realized it was an engineer's hammer. Whomp, 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 ka-ching. The handle snapped off after several swings. Light from the outside room poured through the hole. The man pressed his face against the opening and scanned the primary bedroom. He put his mouth to it and yelled, "I know you're out. When I find you, you're gonna wish you were dead," for dramatic flourish. He booted the closet door. It violently swung open, slamming into the doorstop and vibrating like a tuning fork. He walked through, clutching the hammer hard in his hand. He had murder on his mind. I was just glad he wasn't coming after me. The now familiar sound of footsteps running down the hall prompted the man to sprint after them. I heard a door slam across the house. The rhythmic pounding of the hammer on the door handle soon followed, creating the worst-sounding drum and bass track of all time. Last man at the bar fucks the ugliest broad. Dad, from my memories, confirming what my gut already knew. It was time to split. I pushed through the clothes and crept toward the closet door. I had a clean path to the window. The man was preoccupied with his hammer. I didn't want to imagine where the ghoul was. I was 15 feet from freedom. So why couldn't I convince myself to leave? I knew I should. Self-perseverance screamed at me to fling open the window, shimmy shake down the drain pipe, and sprint to my car. I felt my dad pushing me from behind the grave. "Move, you mook. The fuzz will be here soon." But something was holding me back. If this guy killed someone and I didn't stop it, I'd never forgive myself. I'd have that person's blood on my hands. I couldn't carry that weight. I'm a crook, not a bastard. Sighing, I changed course and headed for the panic room door. I needed to see what was happening. I also needed to find out where the cameras were located in the house. so I wouldn't inadvertently show up on one. It might also show me another pathway to escape if the need arose. My mouth hit the floor as I walked into the panic room. A bank of monitors displayed nearly every inch of the house inside and out. I'd spotted the outside cameras while I cased the place and found a dead zone between them. That was not true inside. There was a camera pointed directly at the window I had climbed through. There was one looking at me right now. Fuck, the man wailing on the handle caught my eye. While it only took a few direct hits to dislodge the first handle, this one was not cooperating with him. I watched him take 6 massive swings and nothing. It held firm. Top quality handle. Adamantium-esque. I looked around for anything else I could use for a weapon and came up empty. Maybe there would be something I could use in the bedroom, with the man focused on trying to break down the door. I eased my way out of the closet and into the room. The place was spotless. Nothing dangerous in here, but unearned wealth and few scruples. There wasn't anything I could use to counteract a hammer swing. Damn it, I muttered. "Who are you?" came a voice from under the bed. I screamed in fright, but a quick slap of my hand over my mouth stopped it from escaping into the wider world. I glanced down at the floor under the bed. Were all my worst childhood fears coming true at the same time? Despite every horror story advising me not to, I got down on the floor and looked under the bed. A scared woman in her early 20s was staring back at me. Her eyes were wide, and I could see her trembling. She was filthy, but I'm not sure she entered the house that way. A sour stench surrounded her, and I realized she'd been here for a while. She had broken and bloody fingernails, as if she'd been trying to pry open a stuck door. On the back of her hand, I saw a raised pink hillocks of freshly branded skin, a shape that I instantly recognized. A triangle inside a pentagon. "Who are you?" she asked again. Her voice was a vapor. Might as well be honest. "A thief," I said. "Who the hell are you?" "He kidnapped me." "H? He's been holding me for 2-3 weeks, the woman said, her voice breaking. "He was in a sack." Her voice caught again. He's a monster." Suddenly, the phone conversations the man had with Pete made more sense. It chilled me. Whatever he had planned for this woman would not be pleasant. "What's your name?" "Inez," she said. "Brian," I said. "He's busy, Inez. Let's get out of here." "I can't." "What? Why?" "Not yet. He's chasing shadows." I said, my voice transforming from a whisper to a yell. "Now's the chance." I promised him I'd help finish the job. "You promised a monster?" "No," Inez said. At once, all the lights in the house flickered and shut off. With every electrical machine off, the house felt still, abnormally quiet. I could feel my heartbeat. It vibrated through my whole body. Wait, no, that wasn't my heart. The entire house was vibrating. I promised the demon I conjured. "Who the F-U-C-K is in my bedroom?" the man yelled from down the hall. "She's my prize, you hear? Tell Pete to find his own goddamn lamb." "Get under here, Brian," Inez yelled. I wasn't going to argue. I dropped to the floor and Army crawled under the bed. As soon as my legs were safely under, the entire house shuddered again, rolling like an earthquake. My stomach flipped, and I chewed back the vomit that had charged the gates. As fast as it came, it left both my bile and the house. It was still again. The only noise I heard was a chain on the fan gently tapping against the dome light. "Whatever you do," Inez whispered, "don't look at it." I shut my eyes. A concussive explosion blew out the door down the hall. I heard the man cry out before his body thumped against the wall. A sickening crack of bone snapping on impact echoed down the hall. What the fuck? Too thunderous. House-rattling stomps followed. The man was whimpering in pain and fear, and God knows what else. I heard him stand, but before he could flee, the air shattered with the sound of dozens of different people's agonizing screams and a low, rumbling growl. "Oh my God!" the man yelled, the panic in his voice palpable. His brain's terror messages finally connected with his legs. The next thing we heard was a thumping of footsteps rushing toward us. Why not leave? I thought Star. The stairs to the exit were right there. Asterisk, then it dawned on me. He was trying to get to his panic room, the place where he believed his money had bought him security, his sanctuary, his safe place. What he didn't understand was that there would be no protection there. He wasn't going to find a shelter to shield him from a bomb. He was going to find his tomb. As soon as he crossed the threshold of his door, an invisible force shoved him in the back. Ragdoll-like, he flew through the air, crashing into a window. It shattered. Glass fell around him like those shimmering jewels I'd seen on the brooch. The man landed with a thud next to the bed. Despite Inez's warning, I opened up my eyes as his body crashed near us. I saw the man. He saw me. Blood leaked out from dozens of slices across his arms and face. There was a burn mark on his back, and his skin sizzled. You could smell the stink of cooked meat. I think about what went through his brain at that moment. An unholy monster was chasing him, threatening him. His life was on the line. He's just suffered traumatic injuries. Then he sees a strange man hiding under his bed with a woman he planned to use for some ungodly, horrific ritual. Before the chaos of the moment returned, he had to think, what the hell is going on here? Who the hell are you? The man attempted to stand, but a scale-covered hand seized him in an iron grip. He struggled, yelled, pleaded, but he couldn't break free. The creature let out another choir's worth of screaming voices and dragged the man toward the closet by his hair. The man screamed at us to help, but we didn't move an inch. Have mercy, please. I have a family. This isn't right. Please. I glanced at Inez. She was stoic. I wonder if the man had felt the same indifference when he abducted and beat her. Each time the demon's cloven hoof hit the carpet, it ignited the fabric. Little fires everywhere. The man screamed as the closet door slammed closed behind them. The next sound we heard were the snapping of bones and the dying screams of a condemned man. Let's go. Inez said, shimmying out from under the bed. Don't have to tell me twice. Several of the smaller fires had coalesced into a larger blaze. The house was a goner. The flames blocked the doorway to the stairs. Inez held up her hand to shield herself from the heat, but it was in vain. She turned to me, eyes pleading. What do we do? I got this, I said. I dashed to the window and knocked out the remaining broken glass. Smoke poured out into the night air. Come on, I yelled. Climb down the drain pipe. I have a car nearby. Inez nodded and nearly leapt out the window. She moved down the drain pipe so quickly, I lost sight of her almost instantly. I climbed out the window and stopped to look back in. The black smoke filling up the room made seeing anything impossible. I felt my tool bag strapped to me. I reached in and found the brooches I stole. Holding them up to my face, I could see dozens of little fires reflecting off their surfaces. Without giving it a second thought, I tossed everything I took into the house. I didn't need a curse following me. Hurry, please. The firemen are coming. Inez said she was right. Fire and police, probably. I didn't want to be here when they arrived. I can't imagine Inez had any desire to stick around any longer as well. Once I was on the ground, I helped her climb the outer fence and clambered over after her. As we hit the ground, I saw dozens of neighbors coming over to watch the show. None of them seemed to clock us. I grabbed Inez's hand and led her into the darkness, away from any potential witnesses. We walked the 3 blocks to where I had stashed my car. The neighborhood was alive with the approaching sirens and burning mansion. Inez sat down on the curb, put her head in her hands, and sobbed. I wanted to comfort her, but wasn't sure if I should. Are you okay? I finally offered. No, she said. But when is life ever okay? I laughed. Got me there. She spat toward the mansion. I hope his soul rots in hell. I'd say he got what he deserved. I had so many questions for her, but didn't feel like now was the time for them. Well, there was time for one. Even if I wanted to avoid asking, my mouth just went for it. How did you do that? The demon? I nodded. I prayed for it. But you were praying to God, right? I said, confused. I prayed for revenge, she said, standing. And something finally heard me. Did you promise it anything? Do you owe it your soul or something? She gave me a weak smile and wiped away her tears. I would never get that answer. She softly touched my shoulder, nodded her head in thanks, and started walking down the street. I want to call out, to offer her a ride somewhere, to ask her those 100 questions, to offer her help. She didn't want it, didn't need it. She operated on a level that was higher than I could even conceive, dabbled in things I couldn't imagine, dark things, things I didn't want to imagine ever again. Despite my curiosity, I didn't follow her. She needed peace, solitude. A thought came to me in that moment. When you got what you came to get, you leave. That was Dad again. He was talking about breaking and entering. But I couldn't help but feel like it worked now. 2. We both got our freedom back. A second chance we thought we'd never get. When you got what you came to get, you leave. Thanks, Dad. Story 4. There's a clock beneath your skin. Hi, Dad. The man's face was lined but still handsome, his eyes warm and welcoming as his mouth spread into a bright, even-toothed smile. Hello there, Dolly. It's so good. He broke off in a deep bark of a laugh. What am I doing? Give me a hug. I smiled at him and then we embraced. It was awkward at first, but then it turned into something like a warm and comforting hug. I felt a twinge of pain in my chest. Was this the right thing? I'd felt so certain before, but now I wasn't sure. Pulling back, he put his arm around my shoulders and ushered me into their house. Mary, Dolly is here, hon. A woman's voice lilted from a distant room. Be right out. Taking me into the living room. He gestured for me to sit down on the sofa. Can I get you anything? A drink or a snack? Or, if you want, you can stay for dinner tonight. I felt myself flushing a little. Oh, no, I'm okay. I appreciate it. I have somewhere to be later, and I don't want to impose. The man frowned slightly, his eyes looking sad. You can't impose, honey. We're your parents. I know it may not feel like that, what with how you were raised and all, but it's still true. I smiled awkwardly at him. I appreciate that, and I get what you're saying. This is all just a lot for me. So maybe it's something we build up to. He nodded and was about to say more when she entered the room. She had to be at least 20 years older than me, but she could have been my slightly older sister just by looking at her. Throwing a smiling backward glance at her husband, she rushed over to me and gave me a big hug. Oh, doll, we've missed you so much. She leaned back to look me in the face, tears in her eyes. Thank you so much for reaching out to us. There's been such a hole in our life without you here. Swallowing, I nodded. Yeah, I felt like it was time. Returning my nod, she sat down next to me. We've been waiting and hoping since you turned 18. Her eyes widened as she put her hand on my arm. That's not a criticism or guilt trip. We understand that you probably grew up with a very dim view of us. The state wouldn't let us contact you until you were an adult. Giving you to that woman for all your formative years, no doubt filling your head with, Hun, don't get worked up now. Shelby is her family, the only mother she's ever really known. You speaking ill of her won't bring us closer together. He shifted his gaze to me. Dolly, you have to understand, we don't blame you or the government or even Shelby. Not really. We know what it looked like back then. My mother shook her head violently. Bigotry is what it was. Ignorance. They claimed we were going to kill you. That the ritual was, she snorted, some kind of satanic bullshit. Turning back to me, tears were spilling down her cheeks now. We weren't going to harm a hair on your precious head. You believe that, don't you? I shifted uncomfortably and ran my tongue along the plastic molded against the roof of my mouth. I mean, I have heard stuff, but would I be here now if I didn't want to at least give you a chance? The man leaned forward, smiling again. That's very gracious of you, very open-minded, and it's all we ask. His lips tightened slightly. And speaking of Shelby, how is she? Is she okay with you doing this? I sucked in a shaky breath. Actually, she's dead. Died last month. The woman gave my arm a squeeze. Well, I had my problems with her, as you can tell, but I am sorry for your loss. Squinting, she caught my eye. Was she a good mother to you? Did she raise you well? I nodded. She was, nobody's perfect, but she was good to me. Always looked out for me. Dolly, if you're reading this, then I'm dead. That sounds dramatic, like a line from a bad movie, but it's still true. And truth is the point of this letter mostly. I could waste time and words telling you how much you mean to me, how I think you saved me, at least as much as I could be saved. But hopefully our time together has shown you how much I love you. And if it hasn't, well, a posthumous letter won't be the thing to do it. So instead, this letter will focus on the truth. I've always been honest with you, partially because when the time came, as it now has, I wanted you to know you could trust me to tell you the truth. Because while I've always been honest with you, I've also always made clear there were things you were not ready to know. For the longest time, I have tried to find some other way to resolve this. Something that wouldn't require you to know the worst parts of this or put you at risk. Unfortunately, I've come to the conclusion that there is no other way to protect you than to tell you the rest and put you in danger, because there is a clock hidden beneath your skin. It has been there most of your life, and I can hear it winding down, the ticks growing sluggish, the toxins steady and unsure. If it stops before we stop this, you will be utterly lost in a way that would make death seem like an endless blessing. Therefore, we should erase the clock that has been placed in you, and the path to doing that is hard, but very simple. You must kill your parents. Tell us about yourself. My father grinned at me. I admit we've done a little internet snooping to find out what we could, but there's so much more we want to know. Glancing between them, I gave a tentative smile. Sure, like what? My mother leaned closer to me. Well, you're at university, right? What V you been studying? I shrugged noncommittally. A bunch of things, really. I love English classes. That and philosophy. Not sure what I'm actually going to do when I'm done, though. The man chuckled. We were the same way when we were your age. Casting about, full of passion but lacking clarity and direction. He looked past me to his wife, his smile widening, but that all came with time. I nodded. Yeah, I'm sure it did. I'm sure it will. For me. The woman put her hand back, this time on my leg. You're thinking about it, aren't you? I glanced at her, slightly bewildered. Looking back at my father, I saw a dark cloud of irritation growing in his face. Leave her be, March. She's doing us a kindness coming to visit. Stop pressuring her. Mary shook her head at him, but her eyes never left mine. No, I can see it. She thinking about what we did to her. She thinks we're monsters. I frowned. No, I didn't say that. I do want to know more about it. And I glanced between them. Are you still in that cult? My father shot a hard look at my mother before turning back to me. It's a fair question, Dolly. And while to call it a cult would be somewhat inaccurate and reductive, I won't quibble over semantics. It was a group we were a part of, and that we have not been a part of for quite some time, since you were taken from us, as a matter of fact. She gave my leg a hard squeeze. And we are so sorry for everything you went through, losing us for so many years, being raised by that woman. She let out a small, pretty sigh, and yes, for taking her eye teeth. My father sucked in a small breath as he studied me a moment. You did know then that we took them in the ritual. I nodded, tears forming in the corners of my eyes. I did. Did you remember it, or did she tell you? I glanced up at him. She told me. His face was unreadable. What else did she tell you about it? About us? I shrugged. Not a ton. Growing up, she told me you were both in a cult, that she figured out what was going on enough to call the police and interrupt some ritual, that as your aunt, she was my closest living relative and managed to get custody pretty quick. Then she adopted me the next year. And you both went to prison for a few months and then were back out on long-term probation. That you couldn't contact me until your sentences ran out or I turned 18 and initiated it. But a lot of it, she kept telling me, there were things I didn't need to know. He was studying me now like a cat pondering a small bird. Did she say she figured it out, or that she knew? That she was part of this cult herself? Pushing my tongue against the back of my teeth, I forced myself to meet his gaze. She said she was part of it. That she changed her mind after the ritual started, after she heard me screaming. She called 911 and then slipped away. My mother snorted. She betrayed us and wants to make it sound like she did something noble. I'm sorry, honey, but I'm very glad she's dead. I half expected my father to snap at her, but he was still focused on me with his lamplight stare. Finally, he nodded and smiled again. I feel like what you said is the truth. I'd have known if you were lying, and that would have really disappointed us. I nodded, hands clutched and trembling in my lap. I'm glad you... What did they do about your teeth? I stopped, startled by my mother's sudden question. What? Your eye teeth. They aren't missing, but they are a bit darker than the rest. She pushed a bit closer and squinted at my mouth. What did they put in there? A partial. I've had a partial since Shelby got me. They couldn't do anything permanent while I was still growing so much. I'm supposed to go in to get fitted with ceramic implants this summer. She beamed at me. That'll be lovely, dear. She looked past me. Won't it, honey? Oh, yes. That's just the thing. I expected him to be smiling when I looked in his direction, but his face was still stony. Another question I have, though, if you don't mind. My heart was pounding so loud it took me a second to make out what he was actually saying. I hoped they didn't notice my delay, or just chalked it up to nervousness. Either way, I was in it now. I just had to be careful. Yeah, sure. He leaned forward in his seat toward me. Did she tell you to come here? I'd like to tell you I'm not to blame for what happened to you. Not because I want to lie to you, but because I want so desperately for it to be true. But the truth is that my nephew and that thing he calls his wife would never have been able to correctly execute the ritual without my instruction. Yes, I had an attack of conscience and called the police, but it was too late to stop it. The methods I'd laid out granted boons to all three of us as part of the ritual and bargain, and I could feel my reward flowing through me even as I lied to the 911 operator about everything but where you were and who had you. I left that night before they brought you out, and while I still heard your cries, the fact that I didn't want to be there to see it should have been warning enough. Maybe it was. And yet a part of me still planned all of this, keeping the knowledge I gained while still forging some illusory path to redemption by raising you and keeping you away from them. I don't know myself anymore, because I'm not the same as I was then in many ways. Time and my love for you have softened some sharp edges, while creating new ones. I'm sorry I'm rambling. I have to avoid sentimentality and get to the point. The point is that the three of us, along with a few inconsequential hangers-on that got nothing but criminal records, made a deal with a being from another dimension, a place called Incarnata. This creature is not a demon, per se, though depending on your perspective, that may come down to semantics. It is a deal maker and a trickster, however, often working within the framework of trading for something of value, something you love. In a sane world, parents giving their child to this thing would work fine, as they would love their child. For myself at the time, and for those two, we had little interest in or attachment to you. That's where my clever second method for imbuing you with value to this thing came in. There is magic, very old, primal magic, that relies on suffering. The ritual I constructed required a token sacrifice up front, your 2 eye teeth, that, among other things done and said, set the contract between us and it. The idea being that over the next 20 years or so, you would be made to suffer terribly, building up a great reservoir of pain, of potential power to be tapped. This would make you very valuable when your time, your clock, ran out and you were collected. I put a kink in that plan by having you taken from them. It wouldn't have been much of an obstacle by itself, but they are afraid of me and don't fully appreciate how badly things will go for them without a proper payment when it comes due. My nephew asked for power and he received it. I understand he is capable of notable, if pedestrian, forms of magic from time to time. His wife asked for beauty, health, and youth, and while this is foolish and vain, she is not an idiot. She made herself very hard to kill by most means. I asked for knowledge, the thing I'd always wanted most in life. The funny part is once I had it, instead of wanting more, I wanted much less. I understood and saw myself differently, saw how small and pathetic we all were, and I understood how pointless and terrible it would be for you to have a lifetime of suffering. So I took you in. At first I tried to make amends out of guilt and self-loathing, but in time it was done more out of love for you. I'm sure you deserved a much better mother, but no one else could have kept them from you. While they don't fully understand how dangerous not inuring you through pain over the years will be for them, they have some dim knowledge that it was a plan and should be seen through, if not for their ignorance and arrogance. Their fear of what's coming might have overridden their fear of me. I don't tell you these things now capriciously. They are part of my last best gifts to you, and my hope is collectively they will be enough to set you free of the thing we bound you into all those years ago. Read every bit of this carefully and thoroughly, but above all, please pay attention to my advice that follows. First, never directly lie to them. They will be able to tell. You can be vague, you can lie by omission, you can play semantic games. They may not trust you, but it will not be since away a pure lie will, and my hope is their stupidity and arrogance will make them reckless in the face of anything other than a red flag. Second, I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm suggesting what needs to happen to get a certain result. If they ask you did I tell you what to do or did I send you, I'm telling you now that the truthful answer is no. I am providing information, not directing you to do any particular thing. Have this firmly in mind at all times. No, she didn't tell me to do anything, and now she's dead. My father nodded and smiled, his face relaxing a little. Good. I want this to be your decision. He stood up and gestured for me to do the same. Would it be okay if I showed you something? I rose uncertainly. Yeah, I guess so. Great, come with me. Hun, you come too so you can see her face. I think she's going to love it. I heard my mother get up behind me, and I tried to speed up, so I was closer to him without drawing attention to it. We were going down a long, wide hallway now, and on the right there was now a door. Had it been there a moment before? I felt my heart pounding louder as he reached out to the ornate knob and turned it. This is your room, Dolly. We made it a few years ago. Well, I made it, but your mother certainly had input on what it should look like. He grinned at me. I guess it's outdated for you now, but we can change it. It might seem strange to you, but we've dreamed of having you with us since the night we lost you, and I saw his arm rising up slowly and casually like he was going to put around my shoulders as he told me what a loved little girl I was. More likely, he was going to shove me into that magical vault and torture me for however long they had left. So I did the only reasonable thing, the thing that my real mother had suggested, not told, for me to do. I grabbed his arm and I bit him. Third, along with this letter you will find a package. When you open it, you'll understand why. When you were a teenager, and I had set upon this plan after exhausting other alternatives, I started carrying you to a dentist 4 hours away. I needed a skilled crafter of dental prosthetics that would not ask questions when I paid him well and ask for strange things. The partial plate inside that box is molded after your current one, but instead of artificial eye teeth, you will find mine. By this point, you will most likely know that I died in a fire in my own setting, and if authorities have told you that I appear to have had 2 of my teeth recently removed prior to my death, well, now you can consider that mystery solved. What is this point of this macabre memento? Well, it could be worn if you were ever to visit your parents. Unlike a normal partial, it has a titanium framework that makes it very durable even under extreme pressure or torque. The teeth have also been imbued by me with certain traits that, if you and only you were to wear them and bite your parents, they would find themselves both immediately incapacitated and in material breach of one of the pledges of the arrangement between us and the entity. With me dead, if you puncture both of them with my eye teeth, the contract binding you will be dissolved and you will be free. Oh God. See, the thing that was my father fell to his knees before collapsing on the floor, shuddering and thrashing. I was already turned to deal with my mother, but I was too slow. She slammed into me, knocking me to ground. I tried to roll over, but she was fast, already crawling on top of me, a long knife in one hand, and her face twisted into a hateful mask. You stupid fucking little bitch. You come into my house and think you can get us. She spat in my face. I'll skin you every day and have him grow it back for me. When it comes, you'll be bursting with more pain than if we'd had you the whole time. She had straddled me, using her knees to pin my arms while she held a knife to my throat. She was fairly strong for her size, but the size was still an issue. She was thin and petite, and not ready for me to thrust my hips and torso into the air, throwing her forward while my open mouth rose to meet her. Her squeal nearly burst my eardrum as I bit deeply into her smooth left cheek. "You bitch, you what? I don't what is." My mother fell over, spasming next to her husband as I got up and stepped away from them. "Do you have something to offer?" Letting out a squeak, I turned around to see a hulking mass of shadows at the far end of the hall. No, I just want to go. I'm free, right?" It paused a moment, and though I couldn't see its face, I felt like it was considering me and the thrashing forms further down the hall. "You are." There was to be no sharing of boons between them, and I smelled the gift of knowing on both of them now. The contract is void, and you are released. It let out a sound that might have been a laugh. "They are not." Okay. Thank you." I ran down the hall, scraping against the far wall as I drew near to the corner where the creature waited and watched. I was terrified it would grab me as I turned into the living room, but it didn't move at all until I was past. Then I heard the floor creak with its weight as it moved behind me down the hall, and my parents began screaming louder than ever. As I opened the front door, their screams were suddenly gone. You may not remember, but I saw you that first night. I acted surprised when they called me as next of kin, and I went back down to Amerson Park, where you were sitting in the back of an ambulance, gauze stuffed into your mouth like a chipmunk and tears streaming down your cheeks. You looked so small and pitiful, and I surprised myself by promising you that I'd take care of you, and I really have tried my best. I hope I've done enough to prepare you for this, to see you through the horror I helped cause. I think so, not because I trust myself, but because I trust you. You are stronger and smarter than them. You can beat this. And when you do, leave as much of this as you can behind. This world is vast and terrifying beyond what most people realize, but it is more wonderful too. Be brave. Find your joys and purpose. And remember that while we all have to save ourselves, it helps to have others that make us feel worth saving. Story 5. If payphones start appearing in your town, don't answer them. Before all this, I can't remember the last time I saw a payphone in person. When you watch older movies, you're reminded of just how commonplace they were, but now they're obsolete, relics of the past that are scattered far and few between. So, naturally, it caught my eye when I spotted one as I was walking home from work. Even typing "spotted one" sounds like I came across some wild animal. That's how it felt, though, like I was suddenly in enemy territory. A walk I made hundreds of times before I had an intruder. It was just odd enough to stump me. I stood in the dark, staring down the payphone like I was waiting for it to move. Never mind the cold, never mind the lingering mist or the sound of distant sirens. The payphone had stolen all my focus. Even still, it looked wholly unremarkable. It was just a typical payphone, thanks to the payphone's black chassis blending in with the darkness around it. The phone itself seemed to be floating. The brightly lit sign above it, which simply read "phone," created an ominous glow. The threads of light landed on the cold and wet concrete, like a hand reaching out to me. That first time I saw it, despite the tightness of my chest, I eventually pulled myself from its spell. I knew that it hadn't been there before, but there wasn't anything to be done about it. Odd, sure, but it had nothing to do with me. It faded into obscurity when, upon walking to work the next morning, it had vanished, only the faint outline of dirt to prove it was ever there at all. A few days went by before I saw the next one while out doing some errands. It was far enough in the distance that I almost didn't notice it, which makes me wonder if I had been in the proximity of other ones and just didn't see them. It loomed in the distance, the same style of payphone, simple and clean, though it was daytime. So the light was off. It was sitting outside my local mall. As people walked by, momentarily obscuring the payphone from view, their heads would turn to look at it, which was comforting, I suppose, the confirmation that I wasn't just seeing things. A few people even stopped and took pictures of the phone. After a few minutes of watching people messing with the phone, I started to feel like a creep just standing there. So I left, which meant I missed all the commotion. The next day, everyone at work was talking about an incident that took place at the mall. From the fragmented whispers I heard throughout the day, I learned that a woman had suffered some kind of psychosis. People gathered around her when she started shouting. Her whole body was shaking, and her eyes were darting all over the place. Everyone on the scene said they initially assumed the woman was on drugs, and so they just tried to calm her down. Cops were called, but before they could arrive, this was described in several ways, but the one that stuck with me is that she mangled herself, clawing at her skin with all the desperation of the living dead trying to escape their graves. By the time the cops had restrained her, her fingernails had been bent and chipped. People said that she dug into her so deeply that you could see her organs. I scoffed that off at first, but after what I've seen, that carnage seems tame. The story was quite the buzz for a while. Eventually, the woman was released from observation, and an official statement was released. They called it an episode of hysteria, and said that the woman couldn't recall any of it, though with a little digging into online gossip forums for our little community, those who knew the woman prior claimed she remained disturbed. She had isolated herself, only ever speaking in low, nonsensical mumblings. By the time this event started to trickle out of the news cycle, I had completely forgotten about the phones. It wasn't until about a melancholy convinced me to take a late-night stroll that I would get a good look at another phone. Only the dark sky was keeping me company as I trotted around the outskirts of the local park. It was rare in my city to be able to grab a moment of peace and quiet, so I was enjoying the sound of my sneakers against the pavement, a slow and repetitive tapping, only interrupted by the occasional horn honk somewhere in the distance. It was almost cruel, though, how close I was to calling it a night before the phone reared its ugly head. Another stare down, this time from just across the street. Licks of steam rolled across the oily-looking road, dancing the thin veil around the base of the phone. It was just me and the phone, staring each other down. I could swear, somewhere in the back of my mind, I could hear it ringing, or maybe it was just my brain filling in the silence, trying to make sense of the intruder. Just me and the phone, until it wasn't. A stranger appeared in my peripheral vision, and I, almost instinctively, stepped back further into the darkness. I was hopeful that he might walk right past the phone, but morbid curiosity prayed that he wouldn't. That prayer was answered as I watched the man reach out and pluck the phone from its receiver. He lifted the dark plastic to his ear and mumbled into it. Then he was still. Seconds ticked by, an ethereal ringing of a call answered, focus fixated on his back, waiting for him to move. Then he reached down and placed the phone back where it had been resting. He turned to look across the street, right at me, like a cornered animal. My body retreated further until it couldn't anymore, pressing back against the chest-high wrought iron fence. The spikes on top poked into my back like Roman pikemen, pushing me towards a lion. The man stood there, glaring across the street, the payphone barely visible beyond his frame. Then movement, stepping forward. His frame dipped every so slightly as he stepped off the curb and crossed the street. My heart raced as he took up more and more of my vision, closing in on me. Words failed to escape my lips, and I could only move in small, cautious steps. It all just felt alien. My brain was untrained on this specific series of events, and so it stuttered. When he stood nearly right in front of me, the features of his face obscured in the dark, I managed to shuffle my body quickly to the side. He turned his head to continue looking at me, the small, glinting white pearls seemingly staring right through me. What did it say? I managed to meek out. Some part of me must have known, even in that moment. I didn't ask him what they said, as if I was referring to the person on the other end of the line. I said it like the phone itself had spoken to him. It didn't matter how I phrased it. His response was not one crafted with words. No, his reply was to look back toward the park. He gazed into the stretch of darkness and reeled his head back. My whole body lurched back as I heard the first thud. That lurch was enough to snap me from my trance. I quickly yelped and started moving towards a man, a futile attempt to restrain him. The fabric of his jacket was like silk as it slipped through the grip of my fingers. His head pressed onto the gate spike. This time there was no thud. It was like a soaked clump of paper towels being squeezed. Wet, the sound was wet. The fence was wet, with a strength and will that I can't fathom. He had slammed his forehead onto the spike and impaled himself. I can't tell you that the iron of the fence became slick with his blood, but I knew. I can't tell you how his face had caved in around the site of impact, but I knew. His body was shrouded in the dark, hunched away from the street lights. But I knew all of it. I knew the clumps of juice and pulp were trying to squeeze through the cracks on his face. And when his body slumped down and his back bent unnaturally toward the fence, his body was still being held up by the spike in his skull like a wet towel. I knew I had to leave. He was gone, probably as soon as the fence worked its way past the bone. There was no helping him. Or maybe I'm just making excuses. Turning to run home, my view swept the street over, and of course, the payphone had made its exit, carried away by rolling steam. My run home was a dream, a moment that faded away before I grabbed onto it. It felt like as soon as I turned away from man, I found myself in my apartment, hunched over the toilet. Despite never seeing the details of his ruin, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Each visualization, every detail, manifested into a dry, heaving scream into rippling water. Fingers gripped the side of the bowl. Now and again, I could feel the fabric slipping along my fingertips. I spent the night in that bathroom, a towel draped over my shoulders for warmth. That room was safe. I could see all of it, and I knew it was just me in there. But everything outside, that all felt new again, uncertain. I had to leave eventually. The world doesn't stop turning for anyone. For me, it did spin differently. There were these words inside of me, things I wanted to tell people. These words failed to manifest. The news cycle became heavier over the following days. First reporting on the man found by the park, still pinned to the fence. But others followed, bodies found, mutilated in various ways. Sightings of the payphone were sparse. At the very least, it wasn't specifically targeting me. Small comforts. It would be there, though, sitting outside a supermarket, hiding in the corner of a parking garage, even sitting inside closed shops, just looming beyond a pane of glass, resting in the dark. Every time I saw it, my heart would seize up. I kept expecting to hear them ring, to call out to me. That expectation echoed in the back of my mind, an ethereal chiming, a sailor to the song and the waves. There were only 2 other instances where I had spotted someone falling victim to the payphones. When I spotted the woman standing on the side of the overpass above me, the sun baking her flat face and vibrant outfit, I knew what was coming. Still, I watched her frame leaning forward until tipping over the edge. She became a blur, darting past my vision before a sick smack rang out. The noise was so similar to when the man smashed his face on the fence. Luckily, I was spared the sight of her carnage as she landed obscured by a nearby home. The intangible ringing lifted my gaze, and sure enough, the boxy payphone loomed, gleaming in the sun, lording over me, a taunt. It all began and ended so fast that it feels like my mind struggles to recall the details, despite how heavy it weighed on my chest. The next instance, however, I was not blessed with such brevity. Life had to continue. Bills needed to be paid, and I had even started picking up extra hours at work. My office felt safe, even with all the mumblings from coworkers about the rash of suicides in town. I knew if I were sitting at my chair at work, staring at my computer, I wouldn't be able to spot any phones. On one of the days I volunteered to go in, I ended up leaving fairly early. It wasn't often I got out of work while the sun was still up. Sometimes I forget how alive the city can be, especially after the phones started appearing. But hearing people talking and laughing, birds chirping and vendors shouting, it was refreshing, if only for just long enough. The walk home goes by a construction site. Normally, it's just an unfinished building in the dark as everyone has gone home. But on that day, it was singing. It was occupied by construction, workers going about their job. I could swear they never make progress on finishing the building. I was surprised by how many people were working. As my eyes bounced from one section of the building to another, I could nearly feel the hook pierce my cheek. The black iron of the payphone had caught me. It sat just one story up from the ground floor, far enough into the unfinished building that it was cast in a shadow. Out corner of my eye, another fish swam toward the phone. I was across the street, cut off from the building by a constant stream of traffic. I could feel what was going to happen before the construction worker took the bait. My heart sputtered and wrenched as a construction site buzzed with life. Table saws whirred as workers sliced through planks of wood, and still the man got closer. The heavy thunk of pneumatic nail guns shooting nails into structure like butter, and still he approached. All the equipment is being moved around. Heavy boards, metal pipes, electrical wiring, and people not paying attention. All of it was a chorus, mocking me. It sang so loud that none of my screams were ever going to reach him. No matter how much I waved my arms, how loud I yelled, how narrow of an opening in traffic I looked for, he lifted the phone to his ear. Something about the man shifted. His posture dropped a bit as if it had been taken from him. With the phone to the receiver again, he started moving. I walked alongside him, across the street, still hooting and hollering. My breath kept catching my throat, but I was getting attention, though. People were paying attention, but they were watching me. I was just some crazy guy yelling. They weren't watching the worker as he trotted through a set of unfinished doorways, still visible through the network of scaffolding. He reached a makeshift plywood table and retrieved the power tool. His motions were fluid, not a hint of hesitation or fear, silky smooth. I couldn't even hear the sawzall buzz into life, but I recognized the shape of it, and carnage played out in my head before it happened. I wasn't there, but in my mind I was standing right next to him. In my head, I saw him straighten his posture, could practically see the vein on his neck throbbing. Calling out to the shuddering metal blade, the teeth easily buckled the man's skin, ripping through as he gently applied pressure, not swaying an inch to his devotion. One tooth after another ripped layer after layer, slicing down to the bone where it began to chip away, lubricated by his own blood. Red would pour down his vest until it pooled around dark black boots. People had taken notice and were running towards him. It was far too late, though. His hands were slick with blood before his body became too weak to hold the tool anymore. Fingers loosened, and it fell to the ground, vibrating across the floor until someone else scooped it up. With everyone finally turning their focus to the construction site, I was free from my observation and managed to slip away. There was nothing I could do, of course, but in my head, I felt people would blame me or think I had something to do with it. My chest was on fire by the time I got home. The images of him pressing the saw through bone had shaking ever so slightly from the vibration. Later reports said he had caused an almost inhuman amount of damage to himself. Like all his mental blocks had been removed, and his only function was to desecrate himself. These thoughts became constant. Not just him, but the girl who jumped and the man who impaled himself. They were all static in the back of my head that I couldn't get rid of. A distant ringing that only seemed to grow louder the more I tried to ignore it. The phones appeared more frequently. It had to be that they were taunting me at that point. Whenever I saw one, my fingers would twitch like the damn things had strings on me, pulling me to them. In my heart, the conclusion was foregone. One day, I wouldn't be able to resist. I could feel it. I need to know what they had heard. What made them do that? How could I find out without it killing me? Or I guess, without me killing me? Then I asked myself, is it the payphone itself, or what's on the line? Why the need for a payphone to deliver the message? Whatever it was, everyone has a phone in their pockets. So why not just dial out to everyone and hope some of them pick up? A silly, stupid gamble was formulated. All it took was a short trip to the store and some time waiting for a phone to show up. That didn't take long, though. Poetically, it appeared where I had seen the first one. Some nightly walk home. Some black box sitting just across the street. The ringing in the back of my mind was deafening, unheard but somehow still so loud. It drowned out all other thoughts, filling my cup and spilling over until nothing was left. I wondered if that's how the others felt, like their bodies and minds were emptied out, and the only thing left was a siren's call. Standing in its proximity, there was a sensation of strings tugging at me, like my nerves were firing off, conducting me forward. The first step felt like breaking through glass, shattering a barrier I didn't know was there. Each subsequent step forward was easier than the last. The eroding of my willpower measured in inches. That ethereal ringing got louder and louder, without ever making so much as a whisper. Fear manifested in small beads of sweat on my skin, animal instinct telling me to run. The night's cool offering of air brushed against those beads and wafted a blanket of cold like silk. fingers hovered an inch or so away from the phone. The phantom ringing ceased. The phone no longer needed to sing. It had me, pulling the phone loose. It felt so light and harmless, like there was really nothing inside, just a black plastic shell. In my free hand, while I still had the mind to do so, I turned on the cell phone. Not my cell phone, mind you, just some cheap prepaid brick. Thing didn't even have a touch screen. It was nostalgic in its own right. Fingers pressed down on rubber buttons, and the burner phone called out to my actual cell phone, still resting in my pocket. Like a clown, I juggled through these 3 phones until my setup was ready. The payphone's earpiece rested against the burner phone's piece, so that anything the payphone had to say could be heard on the other line, my cell phone. Taking a step back, my body itched with a nervous anticipation. My cell phone lifted until I pressed the cold device up to my ear and listened. I can't explain fully the way my body tensed up, like everything was being pulled inward. Still, though, I felt lighter too, emptied out. The voice from the other line dug deep into my brain the moment I heard it. Silky daggers cutting through my free will, severing the present from my consciousness. A heart thudded in time with the universe. Though I'm not confident that it was my own, like you, there was a preconception in my head of what I'd hear when I picked up the phone. So, it's only natural that I was completely mistaken. There was no humming of static that activated me like a sleeper cell agent. There was no deep and demonic mumbling played in reverse that cast a wicked spell on me. No monotonous Russian speaking a series of numbers. Nothing all that strange at all. But I remember every word. "Hey son, I'm just calling to check up on you." Her voice was smooth and kind, an aging mother holding the phone just a tad too close to her face. It was easy to imagine cherry red lips and a large pair of glasses. Really comfortable like, "We just got back from a little grocery run. Had to get more meat." She continued, going on about the facets of her day. Because of the setup, I wasn't able to respond, though I don't know what I would have said. Maybe I was meant to only listen. There were some crazy deals there. So we picked up a couple extra dash, a moment of silence rested in my phone, like she was taking a difficult breath. "So, if you need any, we'd be happy to give you some." There was a distant sound of shuffling, and the clashing of dishes, the sounds of busy work. "Anyways, I was just thinking about you and, well, call me back whenever you can. I love you, son." She finished before a soft click ended our one-sided conversation. Slow and methodical, I stepped back to the booth and returned the phone to its receiver. The burner was left on top of it, a useless relic. Standing there trying to assess myself, all I could muster was hollowed out. That phone call had drained any sensations of fullness within me. My body felt limp. One shoulder drifted down more than the other, and all of me, from buckled knees to slouching spine, wanted to buckle as I turned away from the payphone. I couldn't help but think of my mother. She had been sick for a very long time. Through this sickness, she would call nearly every day, and I was her lifeline, her little pinprick of normalcy. She had left. Every time, I would pick up, never missed a beat. It wasn't easy. Often, she'd only have bad news. Often, I would feel drained. But I picked up, I knew that she needed me. Then one day, I was just so tired. Standing there, looking down the street, I thought about that phone call, thought about how I just stared at her name on the screen, letting it ring, feeling like I just didn't have the energy to do it, allowing myself just once to rest instead. That empty street, part of the bus route, but not a single stop on the street itself. So I knew the bus I saw in the distance would just keep rolling on by. It drew closer as I envisioned my mother's call going dark, the last call she was ever going to make. Not even so much as a voicemail was left. I always wondered what my mom was going to tell me. I shuddered at the thought that she was calling me for help, or that she knew it was her time and she wanted to say goodbye. The voice on the payphone was not my mother's, but it made me think of my mom. Until that's all I could think about. Watching the bus getting closer, all emptied out and filled solely with that misery. The first impulsive thought that popped into my head stuck like glue. One foot drifted off the edge of the curb as the bus drew close. Headlights wrapping me. The same fog that made the road slick drifting in my face. And as the bus approached me, I was able to pull back just enough to avoid the impact and snap myself out of trance. The still air filled my lungs as I desperately heaved myself back into consciousness, wrangling for sanity. Fingers clutched at my chest. My whole body vibrated so intensely I couldn't tell if I was crying or about to vomit. I must have been right to some degree. Transferring the audio from one medium to another via the burner phone, I think, lessened the effect. Or I should say, delayed the full impact of it. I spent a while on the street before managing to drag myself home. From then on, however, I could always feel it. Little things digging away at me faster than I could fill back up. Every time it got quiet enough, there would be a ringing and I would think about my mom. Any time that quite came around and I saw something that might spark a morbid thought, my ability to resist it withered a little more. Scissors, pencils, traffic, other people, water, heights. Everything became a ringing, a call from deep within that is begging to be picked up. And not for much longer will I be able to resist answering. That sinking terror clinging to every thought. Ever since picking up that phone, more and more I find myself thinking about how empty my life is. And I can't help but think, what if I had just picked up her call? What if she needs me? Story 6. My mother would force us to celebrate Christmas every day. My granddaughter Tamara is helping me post this on Reddit, but I asked her not to correct my English too harshly. She's the one that suggested this subreddit for sharing my memories too. I'm not sure why I'm telling this story now. Maybe my years are catching up to me, and I'm afraid that the last witnessing the events that transpired more than 70 years ago will be lost together with my fading memory. Perhaps I am feeling nostalgic, missing the days of my childhood, when the biggest issue seemed to be an upcoming history test or a PE class. I felt desperate to skip. Or maybe I'm just overly cautious, feeling a pressing need to share this information in case one of you ever decide to go out and find the town where I grew up. It still exists, I know it. I keep getting letters with old Soviet postmarks on them. Now, I won't be the one to try and talk you out of finding my birthplace. That's not my job. And frankly, if I was less sick, I would love to come back and visit it myself. But be cautious. And if you already find yourself there, I'll suggest saying that Elena sent you to see Rory. They won't ask any more questions after. I'm sure of that. I was born and raised in a medium-sized town in Northern Europe. My little hometown bore the loving name of Solenval, the Wall of Sun. You could say, if you translated a mishmash of languages that the name encapsulated within itself. It had about 10,000 residents, give or take, 2 hospitals and a few shopping centers me and my brother used to loiter in before Lashenko burned alive in that factory accident. And our peculiar tradition that kept us safe for all those years. We celebrated Christmas every day. My mother would wake us at 8 o'clock sharp. So we would all go down to the living room and sit around a potted plant in the middle of it. We never had a real Christmas tree. What would the people say, dearie? A Christmas tree in the middle of June? So a begonia was out to do. We always thanked the merry man for visiting us. Santa was not a thing in Soviet Union, and dead Moros would only come on New Year's Eve, and then we would unwrap our presents. It was socks. It was always socks. What do we say now? Mama would coo, "Merry man, go away. Visit us another day." Me and my siblings would reply in unison. And he did. Every day. Every fucking day. You know what else happened every day? We had to wear those socks to school, or if we were just going out, they would be obviously handmade. Quite poorly, may I add. And if anybody asked us if they were a gift from Grandma, we would have to say that no, it was a gift from the merry man. As Mama explained, he didn't like his accomplishments being stolen, and would have gotten angry if we lied. We didn't want to anger him again. You see, my youngest sister Lucinda didn't receive any gifts from the merry man no more. She wasn't grateful enough, Mama said, so he had to punish her. I remember that part vividly, even though I was only 12 years old. It started as a normal Saturday. We had no school, so after celebrating Christmas and unwrapping our daily socks, mine were purple, we all went out to do our own things. My younger brother, Ambers, was preparing for a physics test, slumped over his books, his bright green socks visible from the other side of the room. I think before all of this, he actually liked this tradition, unlike me or Lucinda. Both of us started to think it was some elaborate prank from our mother. He always seemed eager to unwrap the gifts. I was helping Mom cook lunch. She was making some beetroot soup, and her hands were stained pink. And Lucinda, little Lucy, she begged and begged till our mother finally let her go to the new cinema with her classmates. "No, boys," she added, pointing at her with a spoon. "You can take some money from the metal teacup on the shelf. Treat us as an early birthday gift." "No, boys," Lucy agreed happily before dashing out the door not so long after. I remember looking at her through the kitchen window, getting further and further away, with her dotted gray dress and cute purple sandals she got last year. I didn't even register that she wasn't wearing socks. 3 of us ate lunch. I quizzed Ambers on Chapter 7 of his textbook. "States of matter," it read. "States of bullshit," he said. Then we played a bit. He had some new soldier figures, and we pretended that my ragged doll was one of the grieving wives. It was not a fun game. When Lucy didn't return for dinner, Mom started to worry. When she didn't return at our bedtime, Mom started to panic. I will rather not tell what happened afterwards. Just know that they found little Lucy with the help of the police. She spent a long time in the hospital, recovering from multiple wounds, and after some time she did come home, but she won't celebrate Christmas with us anymore. Not next day, not next week, not ever. Because the next morning 2 pairs of socks were waiting under the potted plant. Green for me, mustard for my brother, and for Lucinda, there were little legs under the begonia plant. Little legs with tiny purple sandals still intact. Story 7. Don't trust the cat distribution system. My boyfriend and I had always wanted to get a cat, a furry little companion to complete our small family. We had no idea it would be so easy. Everything changed one night when he came into our lives. We found him on a cold autumn night, the air sharp with the scent of damp leaves and city rot. We were just out for our innocent weekly garbage dump. We barely noticed him at first. There he was, huddled against the alley bin behind our building, a shivering bundle of tangled fluff, just a stray. But something about him caught our hearts immediately. His fur looked like it had been painted on by unsteady hands. Stripes running into speckles, dark smudges forming shapes along his back. Such an interesting look. His ears were too large, sprouting long, curling tufts like tendrils, and his eyes, huge, glassy, too round for his narrow, small face, glowed faintly in the dim streetlight, reflecting the night like orbs. He looked up at us, tilting his head as if he recognized us. That's when we noticed his paws, massive compared to his small frame, and those tiny fangs just barely peeking over his lower lip. So strange, so impossibly adorable in that ugly but cute kind of way. We joked that we'd been chosen by the cat distribution system. He was ours now, or perhaps we were his. At first, everything was lighthearted. We laughed at his quirks, his unnatural ability to jump higher than seemed possible, the way he twisted midair, snatching his toys from our hands with impossible precision. At night, he had this habit of stalking our ankles, giving us little love nibbles or gentle taps with calculated swipes before bounding away. He especially loved playing his own version of red light, green light. The second we looked at him, he froze, getting low to the floor, but shifting. The moment we turned away, he moved. We brushed it off as simple play. Tons of cats online do this. It was cute, until it wasn't. The shedding started slowly. Stray tufts of fur on the couch, a few extra hairs on our clothes. Then we began finding the full clumps, matted, twisted little wads as fur appearing overnight, gathering in corners, clogging the vacuum. It was too much, too fast. We were worried. Maybe he was sick. The vet assured us he was fine, though they couldn't pin down his breed. Maybe a hairless cat transitioning, they joked, or something exotic. Odd, but possible. I mean, we had no idea either. The strangest part of this was the fur always grew back, fast, and he was growing, too. At first it was subtle, a little bigger than last week. His paws, his ears, his nails, everything lengthening in grotesque increments. We trimmed his claws religiously, only to find them sharp again within hours. His scratching posts were reduced to splinters in days, resulting in purchasing a new post for him every week. The way he moved changed, too. His body sometimes stretched unnaturally as he walked, his steps too deliberate, too silent. Sometimes, if we looked too long, he seemed wrong, his joints bending at angles that didn't quite make sense, his two large eyes catching the light in a way that made our stomachs twist. Most days, he looked just like the little guy we brought home, normal, familiar. We wondered if our eyes were playing tricks on us, if the strange moments were just a product of our own exhaustion. Maybe it was just the mutual stress messing with our heads. He never slept. We didn't realize this at first. We had the thought that maybe we just hadn't caught him napping. But then, night after night, we'd wake up to find him watching us. Silent, still, barely visible in the dark. Just a shadow with those massive eyes and towering ears. Sitting at the foot of the bed, a dark shape in the doorway. Enormous eyes reflecting just enough to glow. Maybe this wouldn't startle the average cat owner. I mean, we knew that cats had odd sleeping patterns. We kept reassuring ourselves. Cats can be nocturnal. They get zoom eyes, tear through the house, knock things over. But he never did. There were no sounds. No pit-pattering of paws on the wood floors. No movement. Just a feeling of being watched, stalked. The creeping sensation dragging us awake, our skin pricking with unease. We'd turn over in bed, and there he'd be, statue still, pupils wide, unblinking. He kept playing his game, too, even when we weren't playing. We'd catch him in a hallway as we worked at our desks, in the periphery as we moved from room to room, always shifting forward when we weren't looking. A flicker of movement at the edge of our vision. Closer, closer, then gone. Just gone. It became unnerving. We were barely sleeping, leaving us wired, restless. Paranoia crept in, but he was just a cat, right? Just a little guy. Then he stopped eating his food. It began with him ignoring his food, turning his nose up at his usual meals, his treats. But then he started begging. Not for scraps, not for kibble. For the raw meat we cooked with. Taco nights, steak nights, chicken nights. He'd throw himself at our hands, desperate to snatch the flesh before it hit the pan. We tried everything. Locked him out of the kitchen. Sprayed him with water. He'd sit there, dripping, stunned, but as soon as we turned away, he'd lunge again. Then one night, he succeeded. He won. A raw steak slipped from my grasp, slapping against the tile. He pounced. He didn't chew, didn't savor. He devoured it, swallowing in thick, gulping motions, his throat bulging unnaturally as he was choking it down. We reached for him. The hiss that followed wasn't right. It wasn't feline. It was deep guttural, almost human. His fur bristled, his spine arching in an impossible curve. The god-awful sound of his wet slurps filled the room as he licked away. His pupils shrank to pinpricks. His body trembled and shifted. He crouched like a wild animal, not playfully, a predator's crouch. We stumbled back, disgusted, terrified. Looks shot between us for a moment, and in a blink, just like that, he was normal again. Small, soft, purring. He rubbed against our legs, his tail curling happily. Grateful. The steak was gone. Package and all vanished, as if it had never been there at all. That night, we made a decision. We took him to the shelter the next morning. It wasn't an easy decision, but we felt crazy. He could be so sweet, so loving. Belly rubs, chin bonks, soft purrs at our feet. But we couldn't ignore what we'd seen. We couldn't sleep, knowing he was watching, waiting. 2 weeks passed. We started to actually miss him, but life was calm again, back to normal. We were sleeping, eating, relaxing without that unnerving feeling of being stalked. We felt safe again. Then one night, meows. Soft, familiar, beckoning from the hall. A pitiful little symphony. Until it wasn't. They warped, stretched, and turned sour. One final, low vibration rumbled through the dark. Something deeper than any sound from a cat's throat. We shouldn't have moved. But we did. Reluctantly. We got up, our bodies heavy with hesitation, and walked to the bedroom door. We cracked it open just enough for silence. Then something shifted at the end of the hall. A shape too large, too still. A thickened mass of shadow where there should have been nothing. Ear tufts curled sharply in the dark. The eyes, enormous, liquid black dilated pupils, swallowed what little light remained, reflecting our panicked shadows. Beneath them, the gleam of something wet, something sharp. Claws, longer, thicker, twitching with anticipation. Waiting. We understood our mistake. He came back to play one last game of red light, green light,